Now, we continue this session. And in the course of this ongoing session, we'd like to touch upon peaceful applications and uses of atomic energy. We invited to this panel representatives of 3 countries that consider developing nuclear energy. While the implementation in these countries is at different stages, which makes it even more exciting to discuss the factors that might impact plans for developing nuclear power. What are the barriers? What are the challenges along this path? Well, obviously, the set of such challenges is very much common. However, each country would have some special obstacles, special problems, given the history of nuclear power in the respective countries and the level of scientific development, and given the state of economy. Another factor to consider is security. So I'm extremely pleased to be able to offer to you presentations of the first 3 speakers who will tell us where their countries are in terms of developing and promoting nuclear power. And then we will hear from the head of the Innovative Products Development Department of Tenex Export, just a company under Rosatom, Mr. Barishnikov. I'm confident that many of you would know that Tenex Export currently is involved not just in enriching uranium, but also they deal with back-end issues. In other words, this is a bottleneck for the nuclear power sector. And without a reasonable and economical solution, it's impossible to think of large-scale developments of the nuclear power sector. Now, I'd like to give the floor first to Director General of the Technological Promotion and Cooperation Department of the Ministry of Education of Myanmar, Dr. Lat. Dr. Lat, perhaps you could use 7 minutes to brief us on what is the stage that your plans are at the moment with respect to nuclear power development in Myanmar. As far as we know, up to recently, Myanmar has had very ambitious plans to build a research center with Russian participation. And in my alma mater and the Moscow Physical Engineering Institute trained specialists from Myanmar, specialists in nuclear power and nuclear technologies. So I'd appreciate your presentations. Once again, what is the stage Myanmar is at in terms of nuclear technology development? What are the priorities? Now, what about this research center? And what are the challenges that you encounter in developing nuclear technologies? Please.
Thank you. First of all, it is my great honor to be here with you to discuss about Myanmar nuclear energy development with the help of the Friendship Nation. And then I also would like to thank CENESS and also to the CSIS inviting me to be here as a speaker. This is the first time I have a speaker without presentation. Thank you. First of all, let me land it to the topic that we are supposed to discuss is the country embarking on nuclear power program, barriers and solution. So first, let me talk about the barriers because I'm straightforward. And then please remind to all of you that I'm not the subject leaders, or I'm not the country leaders, or I'm not the world leaders on specific topics. I'm just a scientist, and this is just my own opinions about the nuclear energy development in my country. Like other countries, and like just now, President also mentioned, there are barriers in every country facing about the development of nuclear energy. The first we face is the understanding of peaceful use of nuclear energy by the people and by the politicians. Most of the case, they have misperceptions about the use of nuclear energy, because nuclear energy may divert to other purpose, as well as it has a bad image in the past after the World War II. Anyway, we are at the stage of acquiring some nuclear applications and technology. First of all, let me mention the barrier that we are facing is, like others, Dr. Hendricks also mentioned about it. Myanmar is also, you might notice about it, we are a resource-rich country. We have rivers, we have mountains, and we have most of the minerals. And then, but until now, the energy supply to the country, 61% is come from the hydroelectric power. And 36% power is come from the gas. And the rest is just from coal, bio, and renewable energy, let's say, is in franc. As you know, that even though we have a lot of rivers, and they drive to us to lend it into the hydroelectric powers, but at the same time, we are facing protection from the environmentalists and the people and from the politicians too. At the same time, it's very, is said that 36% of the energy is come from gas, but no one in my country oppose the productions of electricity from the gas and the petrol. Anyway, we try to educate the people as long as we can. Another issue is the needs of the country, the need of the country and the government to make analysis on the energy security as well as sustainable developments of the energy in all sectors. And then government do a lot of things to keep which energy is the best suit and sustainable development to Myanmar. Reports are also available for the energy master plan and published by the government and in joint cooperation with the Asian Development Bank. And strangely, no sentence is described about the nuclear energy. The rest, they have indicators, they have results, they have prospectus, and they have expectations, and they have investment. But nothing spoke about the nuclear energy. So that the government have a lot of get investment in terms of the inland and offshore oil and gas area. Very large company of the world-renowned companies are also investing exploration on oil and gas areas, which contributed 55% of the total energy investment. Apart from this, there are two large solar energy companies now investing in Myanmar. Recently, they established the solar power plant, which is capable of nearly 500 megawatt in the middle part of our country. All these, and in between, there are small portions about the renewable energies and others. They are developing in progress. All these matter, all these things that hinders the interest on the nuclear powers. This is the first point in my opinions that I got. And then, after the Fukushima accidents, and then Japan and the Korea, who are very advanced in this area, suspend. And sometimes they stop their program. that make a lot of difficulty for who start acquiring this kind of energy as a whole. So most of the case we are facing by pointing out those countries which are still very advanced, but they have suspended the use of nuclear energy in their energy productions. And then my second topic is the solution, in which I will also touch about the ASEAN and ACE, energy centers, ASEAN Energy Center. They also do a lot of work asking the member state whether they require the cooperations upon the nuclear power energy and then nuclear power areas. But most of the member states face productions like Myanmar. So what we have to do is that the first solution for this area is the awareness of the people, how the nuclear power is a safe and the clean compared to the oil and gas now we are using. And then we also have to mention, and we also have to strive ourselves to show that peaceful use of nuclear energy is a successful one, and we have to create the success story in all the aspects, what we are applying in the water resource, healthcare and industries and so on. Another topic in my mind is that country should have the robust law and regulation whenever they are exploring to nuclear energy and nuclear power. So another one is the capacity building. That's most of the speakers mentioned about it. And then we do have also the formal education, but only 10 to 12 students enter into the undergraduate classes every year. After finishing the graduation, it's hard for them to find a job. This is one of the big issues we are facing. And then we also request, and we are also doing compliance of the international instruments. And we also working along with the IAEA and other partners country. The constraint that we are facing is the political support, which just come from the products and which come from the people outreach. And as you know that when the people opposing things, and the government will decide very soon because they get in a vote from the people. So they understand and they listen to the people. Even though we try our best to attract them to use the nuclear energy in the peaceful use of nuclear energy. Another one is financial constraints. As our country, the investment on energy is just 1%. And then investment on the education is about 2%. So it's very minimal investment. So acquiring nuclear energy may have a big problem with the investments. And also, we are working with the international communities to comply with the international treaty like NPT, CSA, and AAP, SQP, and so on. Regarding with the nuclear security, we already signed for CPPNN and modified CPPNN as well. We also working with the international community on the CENESS, Code of Conduct, Emergency, and so on. Sometimes, like this conference, we have energy, disarmament, and non-proliferation. Too much talking on the disarmament and non-proliferation sometimes also make people believe that the nuclear energy might be in the wrong way. So this is all of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lev.
Our next speaker would be Adel Tulba. For many years, he has been working in Egypt on nuclear energy issues. But prior to that, he dealt with IAEA safeguards, and he acquired tremendous experience in this field. Those of you who follow the Korean situation closely would know that Dr. Tulba used to be head, if I remember correctly, the very last IAEA inspection to DPRK. Dr. Tulba, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your time. I know that you spend most of your time still in Vienna. You spend more time there than in Egypt. But your opinion and your view of nuclear energy prospects in Egypt are extremely valuable to us, given your very broad background and wealth of experience in this field, both in terms of developing such sector and in terms of international cooperation in this field. Please.
Thank you very much. I first would like to thank you very much for inviting me here and to give me the opportunity to talk about countries embarking on the nuclear power program, although I was thinking at the beginning that you'll invite me to talk about GPRK. But anyway.
You are very much welcome when we will have the next session, but not so much on GPRK. We usually speak about Korean.
Anyway, I will manage to touch also safeguard issues where I'm talking about.
You are very much welcome.
Problem, embarking countries, problem, which is facing countries embarking on the nuclear power program. Actually, in recent days, there is about 54 countries engaged in embarking on a nuclear power program, most of them with a very strong economy and a very strong technological background. For those countries, of course, the only challenge which they face is how to conduct the project with a project management scheme and no more, because they have the money, they have the knowledge, they have the know-how. So actually today I am going to focus more about developing country, which they face much more obstruct or problems which need to be addressed. I would like to mention that the topic itself has been widely covered. The agency did a lot of effort in that regard. There is a lot of meetings, a lot of missions, a lot of publications which address the issue, asking about obligations, about requirement, about the need of infrastructure in every country embarking in a nuclear power program. Agency highlighted, that in a very, very famous publication, which is a 19 issue. The agency said that these 19 issues need to be fulfilled in every country, in every phase of the project, from the time of the thinking or even planning, a nuclear project, till the decommissioning. And I didn't want to spend too much time talking about the requirement which was spelled out, but mainly it speaks about the commitment the government should maintain for a very long period of time, like 100 years, as I mentioned before, the requirement for a very independent regulatory body, the nuclear law, which has to address all these nuclear issues, and safeguard obligation. All these kind of things, you will see that the agency always encircle the requirement on the state involved. But we rarely see the addressing of the role of the vendor, the country which supports the developing country, what they need to do, what the requirement, what is the obligation for the vendor country, and also even the international community. Even the international community, as I will say a little bit later, when they talk about that, they always talk about nonproliferation, about inspection, about dual-use equipment, but they really talk about or addressing the issue of how to make sure that this country will run the project safely, knowledgeably. There is even a restriction on the knowledge nowadays imposed on developing country, with of course, keeping in the mind that they always correlate the nuclear power development with proliferation. And although the history shows us that there is no country involved in proliferation was running a peaceful nuclear power program. But anyway, this is the case. Let us go back a little bit to what the agency has done. We will see that the agency always emphasizes or talk about the stable political environment for a very long period, which, as it has been mentioned before, when you are talking about a very stable political regime for 100 years, it means that this country is already made a decision to not to involve in proliferation. So why is this so much concern about proliferation of possibilities, I mean, and why we are putting too much constraint in transfer of technology, and why we are putting too much obstacle, I mean, to know-how, to the realizing that the country involved in such kind of project haven't enough, I mean, information to carry on by its own, I mean, the project. But anyway, go back to the vendor responsibility, which I was referring to. I think that any nuclear industry, when they are doing a project in a developing country, they should realize that they are not only, or they are not just building a project or an infrastructure. They are building a culture. They are introducing technology. It's far more than having a project which can provide an economic advantage. So because of that, the way of thinking should be a little bit much more ethical, I mean, in a sense that they are contributing in the sustainable development of this country more than an economical project. Another point which is very much important, developing country by definition need an economic support. So because of that, the vendor country should actually give the support on issues regarding financing the project, in issues regarding advice how to use this budget, how to spend it, and also advises of how to build their infrastructure requirements from authority point of view, from facilities point of view. Like I said, I mean, infrastructure, software infrastructure and hardware infrastructure. I mean, not only they are building a factory, but they are also building people. They are building craft. They are building a regulatory body who are able to take decision and to evaluate and to assess and to approve and to license. All these kinds of things should be considered when we launch a nuclear project, I mean, between a developed and the undeveloped country. Again, I mean, we come back to the international community. International community, if we see that, like we see today, I mean, actually, all the talk about risk of proliferation, about security concern, although we started the nuclear issue in the world by what's called Atom for Peace. But we didn't see too much, I mean, effort is given to the development of peaceful atom. As we much see the spending on non-proliferation issues, on inspection, on security, all these kind of things. We spend a lot of money, but when it comes to nuclear safety and to education of developing country in the knowledge of nuclear technology, you will find a very, very little and dimension, I mean, kind of spend in that regard. If we recall also how many committee and authority which are putting a list of dual-use equipment, restriction of information, restriction of exporting equipment, exporting knowledge, we will see that there is a really big problem in launching a nuclear power program safely in a developing country. We have to change that idea. It's not that everybody who is interested to build a nuclear power plant is a designated proliferator. This is not true. You have to give them the trust, you have to give them the technology, you have to give them the know-how. They will develop, they will have the nuclear safety culture to the level that they themselves, they will maintain their commitment for non-proliferation as is spelled out in the international agreement. So this is what I would like to address, that when you need a successful nuclear power program in a developing country, you should not only talk about the country involved, although this country is the one who is responsible for that, but we have to look for all stockholders and the responsibility of every stockholder, and to keep the balance between these three authorities with the idea of maintaining respect to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker could speak either Russian or English. Dr. Nguyen, if my understanding, correct, and if my memory serves me right, he completed his postgraduate studies in Dubna in Russia, so it's up to you, Dr. Nguyen, which language to use. Up to recently, Dr. Nguyen was head of Atomic Energy Institute in Nuclear Research Institute of Dalat. At this time, he is senior researcher at the Vietnam Atomic Energy Institute. For the purposes of this discussion, the case of Vietnam is especially interesting because, as you remember, up to recently, in Southeast Asia, Vietnam was considered to be a country with the most ambitious plans in terms of nuclear energy development. Well, obviously, the plans got somewhat adjusted after the Fukushima accident, but the majority of specialists on Southeast Asia believed that Vietnam would indeed be the first country to actually start operating a nuclear power plant. As we know, last year, leadership of Vietnam decided to seize such projects, not to build a nuclear power plant, and instead to build a research facility. Now, given this, what are the challenges that Vietnam is facing now, the challenges that triggered this decision, and what are the prospects for nuclear energy in this respect? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Anton host conference to give me a chance to be here and to take the floor on this section. As Mr. Anton mentioned that Vietnam had planned to go into nuclear power plant, in fact, from beginning of 1990s, and the first nuclear power plant approved by our government 2009. It means it's about more than 10 years ago. And by our reviews and our evaluation, we see that during last 7 years, from 1999 to 2006, last year, we made a lot of activity, and we see that by guideline of IA, the phase 1 of our project is finished successfully. However, it's we after 7 years of prepare feasibility study and other activity for preparatory work for the contracting and construction. In November last year, the National Assembly decided to postpone the investment of first nuclear power plant. Through that time, we attend progress and we obtain the lesson learned on the development of infrastructure of nuclear power program. And I think that based on our self-assessment and based on the recommendation from IAS permission, we think that we are facing with the 7 key barriers, and also I would like to make some solution. I propose some solution to our government. The first issues is national position. As you know, government strategy and commitment is very important for the develop, implement and maintain a safe, secure and sustainable nuclear power program. But usually, its decision to embarking on the nuclear program was made by political level, because that some other element they didn't share, and we think that in order to resolve this situation, our country should make other element to be its improved national position. The first one, energy analysis and planning. As you know, that comprehensive assessment for future demand of nuclear service and supply option in the manner that consistent with the country long-term associated economic development objective in our country should be performed by specialized, organized, and institution independent. Otherwise, only political thinking is maybe not true. The second one, it means the second element in the national position. It's a pre-feasibility study we have done, but should not perform by various entities and will provide political decision maker with an informed perspective on the infrastructure that are necessary to support a nuclear program. Because as the entire pre-feasibility study is prepared by the Electric Vietnam, and they said it's Vietnam necessary as energy and some other a lot of information input data they take maybe not sure. A third element related to national position is engagement of the public and relevant stakeholder is necessary during development of and implementation of the national position. Otherwise, after feasibility study finished, some stakeholder and some other public information, public assumption is raised and much very difficult for the government to decide. The second issue is nuclear safety. As you know, Vietnam nuclear power program has been conducted consistent with the IAEA fundamental standards and guidelines, and on key organizations related to nuclear sector recognize that safety culture program should be developed in each organization involved in nuclear safety, because as you know, development country usually is safety culture is not enough in order to build a nuclear power program. The third one, management. And as you know, nowadays, integrated management system is required for the nuclear organization. And we also, especially regulatory body as well as the operating organization and utility in our country should develop and implement it is the IMS taking into account relevant IA guideline. The fourth issue is the funding and financing. As Dr. Tonvas said that this is one of the main barriers of our country, because it usually preparation for nuclear power project is take a long time, and during that time the public debt increase, and this is one reason why last year our government to decide to postpone the first nuclear power project. We think that to resolve this issue, a long-term economic financial analysis should be carefully considered, and management of financial risk should be also considered and implemented in a country as well in Vietnam. The fifth is legislative framework issue. And you know that any embarking country, Vietnam had issued the atomic energy law. However, this law is not enough address a number issued by a requirement, because that Vietnam should improve national legislative framework, including atomic law and other law related to nuclear power program use. Sixth is regulatory framework. As usual, Regulation should be issued in a timely manner consistent with the nuclear power program requirement. This always will be the challenge and concern faced with embarking country. A number of legal regulation and documents related to nuclear power plant, for example, regulation for construction licensing, protocol for inspection, construction inspection, etc., it's not enough. Not for the project is implemented. We hope that in order to implement nuclear power project should develop its regulatory body and related authority, including its adequate authority, independent financial resource, and technical competent staff. Last issues I would like to mention here is important for our country is human resource. So in order to meet requirement on quality and quantity of human resource, our country should integrate existing organization plan to create a national human resource strategy and plan to include on organization resource requirement, timely qualification, design and implementation of education training and experience program, coordination of the placement of students after graduation training, etc. So in conclusion, I would like to say that nuclear program of Vietnam could be restarted again, we hope. So the government should actively do further action to fulfill the above mentioned common solution as mentioned again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. Я уже представил нашего следующего докладчика.
I have already introduced the next presenter in the beginning of the session. That is Dr. Baryshnikov. He is head of Innovative Products Development Department at Tenex. That is State Corporation Rosatom. They deal with enrichment, supplies of low-enriched uranium. Their annual revenues amount to over $2 billion. The company has been actively involved in the project that President Putin mentioned yesterday, that is HEULEU. The company is looking for opportunities to enter the back-end market. Over to you, Mikhail. Mr. Chairman, it seems like we have very little time, therefore I would ask you to give me a chance to use the podium. I will be more disciplined this way. Also, I was listening to the previous panelists, and I thought that I would ask the chairman to set up yet another session to deal with spent fuel issues, because this matter is very relevant for all the subjects of today's discussion. Those people who have been involved in spent fuel, they get a lot of expertise in many areas. It's relevant to non-proliferation issues because spent fuel contains plutonium, uranium, that can be used for weapon programs. It is relevant to disarmament programs. The uranium that we've supplied to the United States within HEULEU program has been converted into nuclear fuel. Thank you very much for the introduction. I do work for Tenex. We are one of the sponsors and partners of the conference. We have been paying quite a bit of attention, and in fact we've been made responsible for promotion of back-end products. That includes a whole range of issues, handling radioactive material, spent fuel, and inactivation of nuclear sites. I would like to talk about the solutions that Rosatom has to offer without its comprehensive proposal. when we design and build power plants in other countries. To be more exact, I would like to talk about some basic principles that we use as a basis. I would try to be concise, although this is a big subject and it really deserves a much bigger discussion. Today, there are two practices in handling SNF. One is an open cycle, that is open storage, and then direct disposal. And the second model is a closed nuclear cycle, which includes reprocessing of spent fuel. And only the materials that will not be used shall be disposed of. Rosatom is not importing spent fuel from other countries' nuclear power plants to be disposed of in Russian Federation. We only supply some equipment and systems that have to do with temporary storage of spent nuclear fuel. We import spent nuclear fuel for reprocessing only. Russia, as well as many other countries like France, Japan, China, and India, have a strategy of handling spent nuclear fuel. There is a government concept for reprocessing. The outcomes of such reprocessing then get returned to the nuclear cycle. A transborder transition of spent nuclear fuel has to be carried out in line with intergovernmental agreements and commercial contracts, where responsibilities of states are fully described. Why Rosatom is looking for reprocessing opportunities? There are several reasons for that, because this is good for sustainable development, as has been stated in the United Nations for the SD goals and goals. Goal 12 suggests a sustainable model and reduction of waste through minimizing generation of waste, and it also includes technologies for reprocessing. A fairly well-known language that is one of the key goals. Another point is implementation of joint IAEA convention on safe handling of 1997. It basically says that we should avoid leaving nuclear legacy for future generations. It's important to minimize the plutonium and transplutonium element contents in spent fuel. In long-term storage and disposal, such components present high threat, and that threat would remain for very long periods of time. We're talking about millions of years. That is how long the half-life of those elements is. We are also looking to expand our resource base. We want to be less dependent on the international market of raw materials, and we are also working in line with the principles of non-proliferation, because we minimize the number of storage areas and facilities, which is good for better control. Our proposals for the international market is based on several concepts. I will not go into much detail because of lack of time. There are about 7 of them. 1, Rosatom knows what to do with spent fuel. Russia has facilities and infrastructure, and we've accumulated a lot of experience over 70 years of handling spent fuel. We've had a lot of positive and quite a bit of negative experience. We did a lot of research and testing. We have a lot of designs, a lot of equipment, and we developed a lot of procedures that allow us to handle spent nuclear fuel safely. We have solutions which are good for the domestic market, and they're also good for international customers. The spent fuel handling model is developing continuously, and we always offer the latest and most relevant solutions. Rosatom has a clear understanding of where we're going, and that's how it's enhancing its strategy. We know how to handle spent fuel safely, and we offer reasonable pricing. Therefore, we have good solutions for potential customers. Another important area has to do with the following. We are fully compliant with international regulations. The Director of European Commission on Energy said on June 29 of this year that issues related to spent fuel have to be integrated in the plans of building new nuclear reactors. This should be one of the baselines for the European Commission in the years to come. The Rosatom solutions are fully in line with this principle. Within our comprehensive and integrated proposal, we offer full life cycle services. We reprocess spent fuel. We use spent fuel after reprocessing for future reuse. Rosatom proposes reprocessing services in line with the Nonproliferation principles and IAEA guidelines. The Rosatom solution helps customer get rid of complex tasks associated with the need to build their own infrastructure for spent nuclear fuel handling. This is a complex thing. This national spent fuel handling infrastructure. If a customer wants to go along that path, they would have to do a lot of things. They would have to establish projects. They would have to find national consensus, find venues for disposal sites, coordinate that with neighbor countries. We offer all that as a service. All our options are given to our customers, and services will be provided by appropriate organizations. When we remove spent fuel for reprocessing in Russia, we would only need to sign a few documents, an intergovernmental agreement, an export license. In the European Union, it may also be necessary to coordinate that with Rosatom. Our solutions are quite flexible, and we give clients an opportunity to select whatever solution they like best. We, first of all, remove spent fuel to Russia. We take it to one of our reprocessing facilities, and then the outcomes become part of the fuel cycle. And then we return the materials to the customer in the form that is acceptable for disposal. There are no questions on the nuclear security. We are quite clear with the financing and operation of the infrastructure. If a customer is not ready for option 1, we offer another option. That is, we would put together a containerized storage facility near a power plant. Those are dual-purpose containers. They are storage containers, and at the same time, they are transportation containers. So customers can go back to option 1 easily. These two options, from our experience, can pretty much close the needs of any customer, whatever their expectations are. And in the meantime, we support high level of security and safety. Customers just have to make a choice and come up with a timeline. Rosatom solutions have transparent economics. I will not list all the items in the bills that we provide to our customers. I will just say that they are very clear, very transparent. Pricing is fairly obvious, and there are no hidden risks. There are 12 items, very specific list. In the second option, there are only 4. And the cost associated with every option depends on the specific contract. Rosatom solutions leave a lot of space for development. Rosatom offers good growth opportunities as we develop new technologies associated with the fuel cycle. So customers that accept Rosatom's proposal become part of the team. So that gives them the latest cutting-edge technologies. Handling spent fuel requires a lot of knowledge and experience on the service supplier side, and also the customer has to be very professional. Rosatom is not offering any doubtful solutions. We know of many situations that we do not want to be in. The French are following the path of disposal in the rock. We do not do that. No one can guarantee the safety of that solution over millions of years. The concept of an international repository also raises a lot of concerns. We have been critical of several solutions that different people have come up with. Those things are not working. Look at South Australia. They have suspended their initiative to build such a repository. That initiative has not received support from the population. They have not received the support from political parties in Australia, although this could be a profitable project for the country. And the last point that I wanted to mention is the project of building big vaults for storage of spent nuclear fuel. Such vault solutions have some benefits. They are fairly inexpensive in the first phase, but they are not very convenient in the future. There are quite a lot of technical issues that make those solutions suboptimal. In conclusion, I would like to say that every customer has his own priorities, and when people look for a solution, they would look at many things: the cost of uranium, the cost of electricity, various legal constraints, possible recovery of spent nuclear fuel from disposal sites, and many other things. What matters to us is that the choice that clients make is based on good economics, non-proliferation principles, and nuclear safety. Rosatom offers custom solutions based on 2 options of handling the spent nuclear fuel. This brings me to the end of my presentation. This is supposed to be a longer presentation, but I had to cut it much shorter.
Yeah. Just to make it short. Sometimes chair has to make difficult decisions. This is of that nature. We don't have time for Q&A right now. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A during the reception. So I invite all of the panelists, all of the participants to continue discussion, but not right now because we run out of time.